So welcome back. So how was that for you? Okay. So that is my attempt to, in what feels to me like one of the most rudimentary ways, to give you this experience of tapping into your imagination, which is the doorway to the divine and to spiritual experiences. Everybody kind of get that? Everybody kind of appreciate it? It's like, this is not necessarily stuff that we're making up, but it's the doorway through which we take to get there. So, how many of you use a spiritual practice like something like that? Okay, great. So, there's not a lot more time today, but there's just two other spiritual practices that I want to just mention quickly that kind of can augment this process. So one of my spiritual practices that I really enjoy are the use of tarot cards. How many of you are familiar with tarot cards and use tarot cards in your spiritual practices? So basically, there are these cards that are a method of divination or connecting with spirit or knowing spirit. They're basically divided into a number of cards. I think it's 22, but I'm not remembering exactly. Don't hold me to that, which are what's called the major arcana. And then there's suits, like you would in a poker hand, but instead of being clubs, hearts, spades, and diamonds, you have cups, wands, swords, and what's the other one? Pentacles. Yes, thank you. Pentacles. So you'll see here, I just pulled a couple of my favorite cards here. So this is one of the major arcana cards. This is the Temperance card. I want you to see and notice all of the archetypal images and signs that are on this card. These cards are filled with archetypal images, which means that we might be looking at a stream, but that stream is much more than a stream. We might be looking at a cup, but that cup is much more than just a cup. So, the way that I use the tarot cards using active imagination is I might, on a daily basis, just pull a card and, just randomly pull whatever card. And then when I look at that card, I find myself drawn to particular signs and images, symbols, or parts of the card. It's almost as if they're talking to me. It's almost as if they're alive. And they have a message for me, and they want to speak that message to me. And basically, in the same way that you just did in this little meditation, where you allowed yourself to meet your spirit guide and develop a relationship with them, that's what takes place in my active imaginations around these tarot cards. I allow them to speak to me, I speak to them, and there's this relationship that gets developed. I'll just show you a couple of my other favorite ones. Here's the Ace of Cups. Just kind of take a peek at that. And just try to feel those images in there and feel the energy in there. This is not just a picture that you're looking at. I believe that this is like an alive thing that wants to speak to us and talk to us and reveal things to us. Not very different than the way that a spirit guide would present itself in the meditation that we did. Here's the Ace of Swords. just for a moment, feel the energy that might be knocking on your door. The Ace of Pentacles. And the Ace of Wands. What I'm doing here with you today in the tarot, with these tarot cards, is just the most basic, just introduction to it. You know, my hope in even talking about them with today is that for those of you who are already using them, it will help you to deepen your relationship with them. And for those of you who haven't yet used them, you might want to pick up a set. You know, there are all different types of tarot cards, different companies that make them. They look different, they feel different, they have different energy. They're basically the same cards, what major arcana and the suits, but they look very different and have very different energy. So pick the one that feels right for you. And if you are interested, you can probably compel me to, at some point in time, offer like a little workshop here for you, or another experience where we can go into these in a little bit more depth.
Great.
Okay?
Be compelled.
What's that?
Be compelled.
And the last spiritual practice that I'll just mention once again very deeply is the spiritual practice of dowsing. How many of you are familiar with the spiritual practice of dowsing? Okay. So basically, what you do is you use some kind of pendulum. I like the wood pendulums. That's the way I was trained. Because lots of people sometimes use crystals, and crystals have a lot of energy in themselves. And it's kind of, we want the pendulum to be able to pick up either your energy. There are some people who feel that the pendulum is reading your energy. You know, your own inner guru that's kind of connecting with, you know, the energies, and it's passing through you in these micro movements which cause the pendulum to move in a particular way. Or that, you know, it's the forces that are causing the pendulum to move. Again, I'm not attached to whatever it is, I'm just happy to have it as a resource. So kind of the most basic way of using a pendulum, the most basic way, is to ask it, like if there are questions that you have or things that you're trying to figure out, you know, you can ask it questions. And so you'll begin, again, the most rudimentary way of doing it is saying to the pendulum, okay, pendulum, I want a yes response. Give me a yes response, and you'll see what's happening. So here I have a nice clockwise arc movement. And now I'll say, okay, pendulum, give me a no response. And I wait to see what the no response is. And I see here that the no response that I'm getting is back and forth to me. And this is yet another form of divination. There's many, many ways of divination, all of which I love and am interested in using spiritual practices, but in the limited time that I had here today with you, these were just some that I wanted to give you this experience of, and even if in the briefest of ways, so that what you see and realize is that in our walking the path of freedom and free choice, there are all of these resources that are available, that are presented to us as gifts, as guides, as ways to be able to use our freedoms in the way that's totally in our highest good. So, enjoy walking that path.